Hello. So today we'll discuss an interesting topic: Trumpism, Samuel Huntington, and Francis Fukuyama. So, in the late 1992, Francis Fukuyama published his theory of the end of history, claiming that the West had won over the world's political system with a winning political paradigm, that Western style democracies have shown that they're better than others, such as communism and socialism, that in the future this superior system will be widely accepted, and so history being about struggles between different political and associated economic systems, this one struggle has come to an end and the winner is resolved. That is, the Western style liberal democracies will be widely adopted. Now, in The End of History and The Last Man, being a political philosopher and a political scientist, Francis Fukuyama argued that the ascendancy of the Western liberal democracy, with that, the end point of mankind's ideological evolution had been reached. So, this concept was widely popular in the 1990s, and it seemed to work for a while. It seemed to be the proper definition or observation at the end of the Second World War, or what was to come, at the end of the Cold War, I mean. So, as opposed to this, Fukuyama's theory, there was a different viewpoint being expressed by others. For example, as opposed to this triumph for the Western political system, that is, of the liberal democracy systems, Samuel Huntington came out with a different theory, a different paradigm of characterizing or even predicting the future of geopolitics. And he termed it the clash of civilizations. Now, since borders were settled, and liberal democracies will no longer be a unique development in the West, and it will try to spread to other places too. Other countries would adopt this Western liberal democratic systems in some shape or form, and it will be rather universal. And so that concept of Fukuyama had a different twist added to by Huntington. He predicted or anticipated that there'll be some people who will oppose this imposition of the Western liberal democratic systems from the West. So he predicted and anticipated that there will be a whole lot of cultures where this will not be welcome and there'll be opposition. So Huntington predicted, that conflicts are next likely to arise between people who are promoting their own cultures, their own civilization, in response to the onslaught by the Western cultural influences and political hegemony. And so, cultural pride and civilizational values will be the bone of contention. So, people's cultures and religious identities will be the primary source of conflict in the post Cold War era. So, instead of wars between countries like Russia and the USA and so on that we witnessed during the Cold War, clashes will be between Islam and the West, for example, or between a Hindu civilization and Chinese civilization, or between Roman Catholic cultures and Eastern Orthodox churches, or some kind of Western Christendom having a clash with some kind of Eastern philosophical, civilizational, or should I say, paradigm. So, he also observed that research and technology will be the catalyst for civilizations creating and developing themselves and then competing with other civilizations. And the competence of each civilization would determine which ones were placed in a more advantageous position vis-a-vis the others. So, initially, in the first 30 years after the end of Cold War, Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization was dismissed as a delusion or a fantasy, and there was widespread hope and expectation that Fukuyama's end of history was imminent, that the Western liberal democratic system would be widely adopted, accepted, and not challenged. Now, until now, that seemed to be true, at least for a while. Now, with President Trump in the news all the time, and his views and philosophical, or call it transactional, approach to the world has made some things clear. President Trump has hinted that great powers need to carve out or enforce their spheres of influence, with emphasis on negotiating directly with other great powers rather than with smaller countries. There seems to be not only a slide towards mutually suspicious big powers carving out regions of influence for themselves and making deals with each other to ensure that no new entrants can elbow into their spheres of influence. Also, they want to make sure they don't fight each other to preserve their empires, so to speak, sort of a detente. So President Trump might just decide now to make a serious effort at detente with Russia and China, two great powers, quite making the news all the time. And President Trump can make a deal probably with both of them, and all these three powers could make deals with each other to protect and enforce its own hegemony over its region. So the USA's hegemony over the entire Western world could be preserved and promoted by such deals with other great powers. Now, this is a totally different way of looking at the world. And let's see how that impacts Huntington, Fukuyama, and where are we heading next? Now, this new President Trump's approach, this might involve a shock therapy to Europe. To quote The Economist, Europeans are pondering ways to ensure making America great again, MAGA, did not mean Europe getting screwed in the process, as it appears to be a less powerful civilization currently. So, again, a quote, a putative takeover of Greenland, American officials gangsterishly shaking down Ukraine for its mineral resources, and then diplomatic backslapping with Russia's top brass, while new Washington grandees publicly root for a German party harboring Nazi adjacent politicians. Now, the bottom line here is economists is saying that we have this new American approach under President Trump that stand not only consolidate and expand and sort of exploit these smaller countries to its benefits, while diplomatically also trying to ascertain, to make sure that the other great powers, Russia and China, can go along with these plans and sort of can do whatever they want in their own regions to consolidate themselves while the US is busy doing its consolidation. So it seems the USA is not only expanding control of its hegemonic regions, it is also making adjustments with other great powers so that they accommodate each other. Now, what does it really mean? What are the ramifications? This might require being silent on Taiwan, being willing to give up Ukraine or parts of Ukraine to Russia so as to appease them and obtain some quid pro quo from both China and Russia. This approach would also accomplish Huntington's class of civilization, with some civilizations forced to be subservient to others. For example, European civilization, if you can call it that, could be playing a subservient role going forward. Now, the question arises, will the Hindu civilization of India be forced to be subservient to the Chinese civilizations after a few decades from this grand bargain of President Trump? Will Europe be essentially a vassal state of the USA? Or will some European civilization's narrative branch out to carve its own regional power structure, maybe with the blessings of a dominant USA? It'll be interesting to see how much of Huntington's clash of civilizations we shall witness next. And will the world be clashing over different layers of influences. For example, what is going to take shape next? If this present Trumpian approach, making deals with great powers so that they all have their own influences, will that be overlaid with a different layer of influences? We'll talk about that in a second. But to quote Foreign Policy magazine, the central question gripping the international relations today is the nature of the new order that is struggling to be born. Whatever label eventually attaches to this new order, its defining features would include a zero-sum transactionalism in international economics, Thucydidean power politics in which the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must, and muscular assertions of identitarian politics centered on the civilizational states. So we have power politics, where the strong do whatever they need to do, the weak are condemned to suffer the consequences thereof, and then there's identification. The center of identification now is going to be civilizational states that all say I'm this, I'm that, and for all of these reasons we're better than you, and they're jockeying for position and power on the civilizational basis. There is also a related but orthogonal system of viewing geopolitics in the future, the world over. That is the spheres of influence we have been familiar with, the Anglosphere, the Francophone world, and the Latin American cultures. Now, how these layers of spheres of influences coexist with this new Trumpian approach is going to be interesting to see. Is the Monroe document, which President Trump mentions frequently, asserted that the new world was to be established as a sphere of influence where the Europeans were removed, the encroachment of the European powers had to be removed. Coupled with the clash of civilizations, there is an overlay of the layer of politics and alignments defined by the spheres of influence. So geopolitics has turned murky, more interesting, and it's going to be a new, brave new world with Huntington about to be proven correct. Huntington might coexist with Trumpian approach to the world. Deals to be made, influences to be enforced, and subservient civilizations will have to suffer the consequences thereof. Enjoy the scene.